Hello, and a very, very good afternoon to all my friends in India, and a very good evening to all my friends in Southeast Asia. Good afternoon to everybody who's joined in from the Gulf, right? Thank you all for joining in. It's great to see all of you all on the call, on the meeting. Um, it's wonderful that all of you all are connecting in. I have somebody who's raised their hand. I have Dennis and Indra who've raised their hand. Is there a question that you'd like to type out, Dennis or Indra or Bhavan? Okay, so wonderful. Thanks all of you all for joining into our webinar on the game plan for acing steep hiring ramp, right? The webinar is going to start soon. And as we go ahead, start the webinar, I'd like to quickly play a video for you all that talks about Monster's capabilities. Here you go. I am just quickly playing this video for you all in a minute from now. There you go.
Explore a world of ready-to-hire talent with Monster.com. Do you want to find better? Come along. With presence across APAC and Gulf, Monster.com gets you a wider reach to the best candidates. With a database of millions of resumes, Monster Resume Search, powered by Semantic Search 2.0, helps you get the right fit faster. Get guaranteed applies to each job you post. Join thousands of companies who are engaging with millions of active job seekers through Monster Job Posting. With a suite of high-tech hiring solutions, choose what fits your needs the best. With Monster.com, you have got the best online resource in your recruiting arsenal. Let's help people connect to the right jobs. Let's build a better community. Let's find better faster.
Okay, that was a quick introduction to Monster.com. Not that any of y'all don't know about Monster.com, but then I quickly wanted to showcase all that Monster has for you. I have two participants who've raised their hand. Dennis, Lakshmi, Zubair. Is there a question that you'd like to type out? And if I could answer for you on today's session? Okay, so for everybody, if you have a question, please type it out in the chat window. We'd love to answer all your questions. But as we go ahead, right, as we go ahead, let me quickly kind of set the context for today's webinar, which is on basically how you can ace any steep hiring ramps that you have in your organization. Hosting this webinar is Manish Gupta, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Tagged. Now, Manish and his team are authoring the next code of work in talent acquisition. Manish has got nearly 2 decades of experience in consultative sales, and he's got a keen interest and understanding of emerging technology trends as well. Manish brings with himself years of business leadership and expertise spanning telecom, BFSI, and information technology sectors. Manish is currently responsible for client acquisition, business revenues, and carrying forward the growth charter. Manish has recently concluded his second master's in data science, and he's somebody who likes to keep himself updated on the latest economics and technology trends in the market as well. That being said, I introduce Manish to take the stand. Thank you, Manish, for taking the time to host our webinar today and to speak to our audience on such a critical topic. Over to you, Manish.
Thank you very much, Parag. Thanks for having me here. It's such a pleasure being here and talk about something which we are all witnessing. So before I do that, let me just quickly share the screen as I'm sharing the screen. Just give me a minute. Just let me know if it is visible, Parag.
Yes, we can see your screen now, Manish.
Okay, great. So thanks again, Parag. As I mentioned, this is a very apt topic for today's conversation, and very happy to share our ideas around it. How exactly are we going about it? A bit about me, as though you were very generous in my introduction, but I started my career almost 20 years back. 20 years back when dot com, bubble was almost playing out, and there was a hiring ramp when it came to dot com companies. I moved on to Wipro in another 6 7 years, where a lot of ERP implementations were happening at that point of time. That was another ramp scenario where core banking solutions were implemented, SAP was getting implemented. I moved on to telecommunication sector in 2010. That was the time when 2G, 3G, auctions of licenses were happening. The likes of Bharti Airtel, Vodafone, they were absolutely doing the mother of all ramps. I mean, enhancing their capability network, their telecommunication network, right? Around 2016 or 17 is when I decided to move on to banking sector. That is the time when RBI, floated new licenses and new banks came up. You had payment banks coming up. You had, NBFC banks coming up, small finance bank coming up. And today we are talking of yet another ramp. So it looks like the ramp has always followed me, or I have followed the ramp. So that's pretty much about me. But, a bit about the company I work for. So I fulfill the role of a chief growth officer for TAG in my current capacity. And I think in last 10 years at TAG, we have had wonderful opportunity to work with some of these clients which you see on your board. Last 1 decade has been spent in picking up a lot of non-linear insights which we bring into play, and that's what I'm going to talk about it. Last 1 decade of working very closely with them, understanding their best practices, implementing our best practice. That's how our journey has been for the last 10 years. And today, I think Bespoke, we are the largest RPO provider in the country that way. And today's session largely is around the hiring ramp which we are doing. So as I mentioned, hiring ramp is all pervasive. We see it almost everywhere, and most of our existing relationship or even the new signups which we are doing are all about ramps. So as I'm talking to you, there are teams which are executing the same ramp elsewhere. So with this, we quickly move on and understand what is this hiring ramp and why is it there. I mean, we all know that last 3 quarters or so, the business sentiments were down, and when green shoots started happening in the month of January, when recovery started happening in the month of January or December, maybe last year, a lot of requirements, a lot of business started flowing in, and hence the need for a hiring ramp. So that is something which is very evident. But one large macro, thing which we are seeing in the market is this: India is becoming a preferred destination for most of the work. So a lot of Fortune 500 companies, a lot of companies who have headquarters in Europe and US are looking to set up their innovation, engineering R&D or captive centers in India. That's one bit of it. Companies who already have centers here in India are also looking to bring more projects to India, more technology projects, more engineering R&D projects. So I think one good news for all of us in the recruiting and the talent acquisition community, I think this ramp is here to stay. And what we are witnessing right now, which is the second wave, right? Just imagine the second wave will perhaps again push things at the backward, and when recovery happens, you will have another ramp. So what we feel at TAG is for next 2 or 3 years, there'll be cycles of downturn and then ramp, and then downturn and then ramp. And hence very important for us in the recruiting community and the talent acquisition community to understand how to go about implementing a ramp, to understand how do you unfold your plans and strategies when you are faced with a hiring ramp kind of scenario. A quick a survey which we did earlier this year, and by the way, we spend a lot of time and activity in doing a lot of talent related surveys. So that's a snapshot of the survey. You see a lot of sectors today are also had forecasted way back in 2010 December that whole of 2021 is going to be RAM. So if you have participants joining in from India or elsewhere in other jobs, I understand there are people joining from Singapore and Middle East, and if you happen to be from any of the sectors, be get ready. I mean, there is going to be a ramp at what you're witnessing for now, and that is going to continue for a little slightly longer. uh, with this, let's quickly understand what is a ramp. Just imagine it's a Thursday evening, you are winding up your work, right, looking forward to dinner, probably planning for your kid's birthday the coming week, or maybe you're thinking of taking 2 weeks off because you've been working for last 1 year, and then suddenly you are pulled into a MS Teams or a Zoom conversation only to be told that you need to hire 400 people with cloud infra skills, and all that in the month of four in the space of 4 months. Now, this is unplanned. It appears unrealistic, but that's what hiring ramp is all about. So, irrespective of the sector you are working for, irrespective of the kind of skills you hire for, if business comes unannounced and asks you to take a formidable task of hiring X number of people in very short period of time, that's what we call ramp. What do you do in such a case? Probably take a glass of water, which is fine, but then quickly wrap your mind around how will you go about doing it, because time is the essence in a hiring ramp scenario. So what we believe is that when you are faced with a scenario, you can't be addressing this problem by only focusing on two things. You can't be saying that I need to hire 400 people. You can't be saying that I need to hire that in 4 months. That just doesn't happen. Just doesn't help. So what you do in such a scenario is perhaps break down the problem into smaller parts. When you break down the problem into smaller parts, it's then only will you be able to concentrate on each bit of it. That's one thing. You'll be able to have strategies for each bit of it, the other thing. And third thing, you will develop matrix around and governance around each of the smaller parts. So we are going to talk more about it in the coming slides, but let's quickly move from a hiring ramp scenario to sports. I mean, 100-meter sports. I think all have fancied running at some point of time. No prize for guessing who the guy is on your screen. He's Usain Bolt. A world record time holder, Olympic gold medal winner, and he has been doing consistently for so many years. Let's understand, why does he do that? I mean, there are enough, content and videos available. Do go through it. It calls for a good read and makes for a good watch. But if you just go through it, you'll find that there are 4 or 5 reasons why Usain Bolt is what he is right now. And if you look into the details, you'll find that the guy has an amazing ability to start off like nobody's business. He just springs himself into the scene in first 10 seconds of the sprint, right? He's way ahead, he's athletic, he propels himself in 45 degrees. So the initial start or push which he gets, in 10 seconds, off he goes. He's far ahead than his competitors, so to say. And obviously he's gifted with a lean body. He has got the height, he has got the muscle power, he has got the lungs which propel him to that kind of speed. So he has those kind of differentiators. But what is more important, over a period of time, he has realized, and by the way, not many of you would be knowing, or perhaps you'd be knowing, that he was not the winner right from day one. He used to lose in races, and that's when he mastered the art of racing. He understood that the entire 100 meters got to be divided into first 10 or 20 meters, and then 40 meters, and the last 20 meters. He knows that the last 20 meters is the dash, is where you need to have preserved enough energy to give it the last and the final try in the last 20 meters, and which is why often in last 20 meters he's far ahead. You will see that in 60-70 meters, still 60 or 70 meters, he's neck to neck with everybody, but last 20 meters he's far ahead. So that's what Usain Bolt is for you. He has understood the game very clearly, right? He has planned for the unplanned, right? I mean, at that level, at that professional level, where you are running, outdoor, indoors, wind velocity, track, etc., all that matters. And the guy has understood, he has planned for that, for that unplanned, and he goes in a very methodical manner. He's not bothered about what are the circumstances around it. And lastly, I'm sure he would be blessed with right coach or mentoring and people who have been supporting all throughout. He records his failures and successes and draws inspiration out of it. Now, why are we discussing a 100-meter race here? Why are we discussing Usain Bolt here? Because I see a strong correlation between a 100-meter race and the hiring ramp, right? For starters, let me just throw it at you, right? A ramp is not a scenario where you are running all by your own. Please understand that you might be hard pressed for time and hiring pressures, etc., etc. But please understand that you are hiring against some of the best of your colleagues who are hiring for some other companies, going after the same skill sets, etc. So it's very important to stay ahead of the curve, and hence the analogy between hiring ramp and a 100-meter race. Now we'll come back to this again and again, but believe you in me, that's the funda of approaching a hiring race, a hiring ramp, if I may say so. I mentioned, I think in one of the slides, in the previous slide, I mentioned that you got to break down the problem into smaller parts. How do you break it down? This is how you break it down. And to our mind, to strategize a successful hiring ramp, to create processes around that strategy and to implement those strategy, you need to have these 10 things in place, which is prioritize, funnel and forecast, debrief, deep dive, so on and so forth. What I'm going to do in next 30 odd minutes is I'm going to pick up each of that and throw my thoughts around it, right? Look, I don't want to teach you, or I don't want to train you on recruitment techniques and sourcing methodologies, etc., etc. Because I'm sure all you wonderful folks would be doing day in and day out, and you would have mastered it. I'll only try and bring out some of the insights which you need to keep it in mind when you are in a hiring ramp scenario. So let me just quickly start on this. So first is prioritize. So what do you mean by priority? I mean, we go back to our example of 400 cloud infra skills to be hired over 4 months. When you double click on that, you realize you have 36 roles. Now try as you might be a recruitment manager, you are a talent acquisition leader, or whosoever you are, it is just humanly impossible to concentrate on all the 36 roles with equal precision. It's just not going to happen. So you need to understand, you need to prioritize that which of the roles are important. And the thumb rule in prioritizing is this, right? What is the cost of non-filling these roles? Because if you gauge by volume, right, you will get some understanding. This role number 2, 7, 9, 21, 22, etc. are priority 1 roles. If you look at business importance, and if you have conversation with the hiring manager, you will realize that each hiring manager is coming back and saying that the role I'm going to hire is the most important. So when you have all the 400 important roles, what is your yardstick of gauging priority? Is when you ascertain during conversations and try and understand that if I don't hire for this role, what will happen? What are the implications? So say, for example, if you are looking at a particular cloud infra skills, which has about 25 or a 50 rec, which is open, out of which 20 of them are going into servicing some client of your company, etc., where there'll be a loss in revenue, but 5 of them will go into a product development scenario where the new product is touted to bring the next $1 million for you, then obviously which is the most important? The product management role. So create this priority list in your mind, write it down, take a printout, post it in front of your work desk, so that 2 months, 3 months down the line, when you're having conversations around this role, and when you're having conversations with the hiring manager, with the business leader, with the team leader, even when you're having conversation with your team, you should have at the back of your mind that it is the P1 role I'm speaking of, it is the P2 role I'm speaking of, P3 role, etc., so on and so forth. So tag every role, keep it handy. There's one more reason why I'm going to spend a little more time, because I'll go back to the Usain Bolt example. It's the early start of the push which is most important, and we are at that stage right now. So just be with me on this. There's another reason why I'm saying that prioritizing is important, because you have limited resources with you, right? You have limited budget, you have limited team members, you have limited so many other things. But what is in serious limitation is the time, because time is the essence in a hiring ramp scenario. So when you have less time, you would want to apportion it judiciously so as to give the larger share and the larger time and the larger resources to the P1 roles, etc., etc. So prioritization is the key. We move on. When you have done the prioritization, right, the next thing which you should do is, let me just quickly, I can see this. I'm not able to see the screen completely. Let me just quickly move. Okay, here it is. Just give me a minute, folks. Okay, great. So I think after you have prioritized, you need to take care of the 400 rules. Now, in all probability, the business would have come back to you saying that you need to hire 400 cloud infra skills, say, for example, in 4 months, without realizing what kind of effort which goes into hiring of 400 roles. So you need to do this calculation backward. You need to create a funnel slating, and apply your own ratios, and that will depend on the roles which you're hiring. That will depend on the sectors which you are hiring. That will depend on the seniority which you are hiring, etc., etc. Do your own math, right? And I'm sure all of you would be doing it. You'll be figuring out that to effect a 400 hires, you need to have a 600 offers rolling up. You'll have to have about 1,800 interviews which you need to conduct. You have to have about 2,880, profiles, resumes which you need to submit to the hiring manager for their review. You need to reach out to 4,800, candidates, possible candidates. Now, this kind of calculation, I'm pretty sure that your business would not have understood, would not have calculated, would not have fathomed. Right? There are about, let's say, 20, 25 hiring managers. And just imagine a scenario when there is one hiring manager who just feels that he needs to hire only 5 resources. That's it. But he's not aware of the kind of work you do. And hence stand up, right? Your hiring managers or your business know more about business, which is taken, but it is you who know more about the talent acquisition, and it is you who understand more about the effort which goes into. And stand tall, be equal, have this conversation with them. And that's what brings to my next point, which is, yeah, which is debriefing with the hiring manager. So you should create a cohort, bring all the stakeholders together, let them understand what it takes to hire 400 people, let them understand what would be needed from their side to effect this hiring. Let them. So let's say, for example, you start on the 1st of April, right? I think in 5 or 6 weeks, or in 4 week time, you will get into a stage, even not even 4 weeks, I think 3.5 weeks time, you will get into a stage where you'll have to align interview. So make them understand that we're talking of 1800 interviews. You're talking of 1800 hours which need to be blocked on the on MS Teams or Zoom or whatever it is. You're talking of panels which need to be created. You're talking of scenarios where the same person is interviewing again and again in panel 1, panel 2, or etc. You cannot have 10% of panels disappearing because it is a weekend or something of that sort. That's none of your business. You need to make it very clear that if you need results at the end of 4 months, these are the things which you would need. Socialize it, make the stakeholders understand and appreciate what it is. The other thing which I wanted to mention over here is the speed, quality, cost in a conversation trade-off, right? So imagine a business as usual scenario where you need to hire, a resource for one of the team member or hiring manager. Usually the hiring manager looks to hire getting the best of the resource, and likewise you also reciprocate by providing the best of the resources available. But in a ramp kind of scenario, we have always seen that, halfway down the ramp or 75% down the ramp, right, it's the hiring manager which comes back and says that, hey, I think not many selections are happening, so I'm willing to let go of some of these good to have, features or skill sets, etc., because for the project which I'm going to drive, these are the skill sets which are critical and needed. Now just imagine the guy in his mind has done a favor to you after, by coming to you after 2 months and saying that, these are the skill sets which I'm not looking to hire aggressively, you can only concentrate on this. But essentially what he has done for you, he has created a ramp within a ramp. So as it is, you were hard pressed to hire the entire skill sets in a 4-month time period, and by doing this he has made it further shortened and said that, can you hire a reduced a profile in next 1 month? Don't do this, right? In very early on in conversations, when you're having meeting with the hiring manager, please understand what are the most important skill sets, which critical skill sets, must have skill sets, and try and understand the good to have skill sets. You need to look at it from a business lens, and you need to have those conversations and try and understand that, right? And if you can get a hiring manager to a point where you say that, while I would look forward to hiring, or my team is going to look forward to hire these kind of this skill sets, but I believe that if we have to widen our pool, we can also look at a probably shade level, shade below. So okay, so let me just give you a few examples. There's a certification which requires 5 levels. Now JD mentions that somebody who should have cleared certification level 5 is a good candidate, or is a qualified candidate. But somebody who has cleared level 4 and has already applied or has taken exams for level 5 Cisco certification, etc., then what? Right? So have this conversation, right? Ask for these possibilities. Try and see, without compromising, can you increase the or widen the net? So that's the point which I wanted to drive more so from a hiring ramp point. You don't have time, my friends. You don't have time for to be hired in next 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, etc. And which is why this conversation. Now, before I move on to the next part, I think we covered 3 things. We talked about prioritization, we talked about the forecasting or funneling, and we talked of debrief. To my mind, these are the start or the early push which is needed for the project. And if I go back to the 100-meter race, that's where Usain Bolt stands tall and leaps ahead and is far ahead than most of the people who are in race with him. So these are important points. We've taken a little more to understand, some of the nitty-gritties around it. But if you have done everything correct till this point, I'm sure you're going to sail through the next. So without much ado, again, we talk about taking some deep dive into the roles. So here it is. I mean, we at TAG firmly believe that, a JD or a mandate is no different from a JD of a like or a competition, so to say, right? And hence does not give you any idea of the selection, rejection, or hiring criteria. And hence very important that you engage with the hiring managers, you engage with the team leaders, you engage with the business leaders to understand what are the critical to quality parameters. Very, very important from a ramp perspective. Now, to our mind, the CTQ parameter is largely around qualification, years of experience, ability of a person on skills, and person's availability for a job or a role. Let's start from the point number 4. Right, I mean, in Bangalore, I'm based out of Bangalore, and I know that folks, engineers, software engineers who are working out of Electronic City are not willing to join any company in a wide field area. You might find it surprising, but that's how things are. So on paper, a candidate would meet all the criteria, but he's not available for the role you are offering him, right? So you don't waste time with this, because he would add on to the funnel only to get dropped off and create headaches later. Similarly, ability of a person on skills, these are largely technical skills. As I mentioned, I think I've covered it in the previous slide itself. Understand from the hiring managers what is it that is needed, what are those critical skills, what are the must have skills, and what are the good to have skills. So when you create an understanding out of a JD and a mandate by having conversations with the hiring manager, you may want to create something like this. That's what we do. If you focus on the right hand side on the top, right, there's something known as ideal versus available. So a JD largely talks about ideal candidate, and you bring your talent acquisition insights, you bring years of experience in having conversation with the hiring manager, and make him understand that these are the available set. Once you baseline, and once you take a sign off on those parameters, is when you start going to the market and start getting those candidates. Believe in me, a stitch in time saves 9. If you sharpen the axe, you will fell the tree in record less time. So that's something we are trying to do, what we are trying to achieve. So it's always better not just to take seats, a JD, and start running in the market. Have conversations with the hiring manager, understand. Now, at this point of time, maybe you would want to stand tall and ask a hiring manager, what are those questions which you would typically ask in an interview? And what are the likely answers for that question? Believe you me, I'm not sure how many people would be doing this, but to my mind, this is a very important point. First of all, you stand tall, you ask the hiring manager, you understand, right? So that when you are having conversations with the possible or the probable candidate, you are actually probing in the right direction. Look, at the end of the day, these are your probing skills which are coming into picture, either with the hiring manager or with the candidate. Sometimes we ask the same question in a roundabout manner to a hiring manager, which is fine. Everybody has its own style. Don't want to correct anybody. But if you're asking the questions in a roundabout manner, that what are the skill sets you are looking to hire, you might not get the right answer. But try asking this question: what is it that you are going to ask? What are the questions you are going to put to a candidate, and what are the range of answers? Now, you might not be an engineering R&D, super specialized folk, but all said and done, you are not hiring for all super specialized skill sets as well. Over the period of time, you also understand the kind of skill sets which are there in the market. So when you ask these direct questions, you get a lot of insights. You go to the candidate, you are able to have a further refined CTQ parameter based screening for your hiring manager. He'll be happy with you. Okay, we move to the next point. I think we have covered 5, and I'm just going to breeze by. How are we doing on time? 3:28. Okay. So what I'm going to do for the next 5 points, or the last 5 points, I'm just going to breeze past through it. I'm sure all of you would be doing this, but as I mentioned earlier, I'll only try and bring about some consideration in a hiring ramp scenario. So let's say, for example, in this case, collaborating with business. I know all of you do that. I mean, you build strategies with your hiring manager, you share insights with him. But what is most important in such a scenario is that so you created a cohort. You've announced this hiring ramp project on the scene, and you have stakeholders aligned, and you have hiring manager meetings, etc., which has happened, right? But you will invariably realize that after going to the market, if you have some doubts, or if you have some feedback which you need to give, or you need to take, the hiring manager is not available. And hence, in the very first meeting itself, sign off with him that this is the first meeting, and before you are able to find those 20, 30, 40, 50, or 5 candidates for that hiring manager, you need to have 3 or 4 conversations more with him, and open those lines. Say that, can I reach out to you? Can I call you? Do I text you? Etc., right? So create that avenue for a feedback loop or mechanism, which I'm saying, and sign it off with the hiring manager. That's one thing. Second, insist on shared goals. So, right now, your whole organization knows that in next 4 months, here is a team which is going to deliver 400 cloud infra skills. That's the only goal which is there in their mind, nothing else, right? You need to create sub goals around it. You need to say that, yes, these many interviews need to be conducted. These many offer letters need to be rolled out. Create those goals, create those milestones, and make your hiring managers or business equally responsible. The way I'm putting it across is that create those shared goals and broadcast it. So that's collaborating with business. The other thing in a hiring ramp scenario is that you'll follow the whole 9 yards of recruitment. There's no shortcut to it, but you have to do it in a very time bound manner. You have to do it in a very staged manner, and the best way to do it in a hiring ramp is to identify the purpose. So it can be drive, it can be interview, it can be recruiting, it can be offer letter, it can be anything. Identify the purpose and create activities around it. I'm sure you must be creating drives, but are you creating source-a-thon? So let's say, for example, you have got this project on 1st of April. Are you telling your team members that 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, these are the 4 dates when all of you have to log on to Monster website? Yeah, I'm aware of the great work they are doing and enough profiles which are there. So all of you have to necessarily log on to a Monster, website and source profiles for yourself, right? Do you do that? It should not, while it will be a activity which will continue over a period of time, but create focus or drive around it. Similarly, recruitathon. Similarly, interview week. So, announce the hiring manager when you are laying down the plan in front of everybody, that the 5th, 6th, and 7th week, right? These 21 days, hiring managers have to dedicate so many hours. Here is a team member who's going to block calendars, etc., etc. Preempt, forecast this work, and announce that that's the interview week. At the end of interview week, we will aim at having so many shortlisting, etc. Do this with your hiring managers. Do this with the business. Rigorously say that, follow it up. Rigorously communicate. Only then you will have, you will be able to avoid the no-shows and other, eventualities which might strike. So that's something I wanted to mention as far as creating process is concerned. Once you've created process and you're going to the market and going to the outside world for sourcing of profiles, screening those profiles on your understanding, and selling those candidates, selling those jobs to those candidates. Now, again, you guys are good at it. I'm aware. But from a hiring ramp scenario, what I want to mention in sourcing are 2 things, right? Remember, you created a P1, P2, P3, P4 priority list. Stick to it. Don't lose sight of it, despite the fact that you are just involved in day-to-day activities. Just create, just stick to it, whatever you have created, right? And you should be in a position to measure all of that. Second, stick to the CTQ parameters. So I think we've discussed a lot about it, right? Don't think that you're not getting resumes and hence can you get more candidates into the fray, etc. If he is not meeting the CTQ parameter, your hiring manager is not going to hire. So you will only add to the burden and add to the, you'll add to the displeasure of almost everybody. So stick to these 2 things. Screening, again, you know what to do. The only point which I want to make here is escalate. Time is the essence. If you have no show which is happening, if you have a hiring manager who is not accessible for a variety of reasons, right? I'm sure there is a backup, but you escalate, don't sit on it, right? Escalation is the key. Bringing to the relevant stakeholders is the key. And lastly, when you are having conversation with the possible candidates, right? Remember, you probed with the hiring manager. You understood why the candidate should be joining. Bring out those points, because it's the instant gratification which even the hiring manager is looking at, and candidates also in a hiring ramp scenarios are looking for instant gratification. So make sure that you don't create those lofty ideals around it, which you should bring out the essence of a company and the best practices of a company, but largely talk about the projects in which the guy is going to get into. Yeah, so that's sourcing, screening, and selling for you. I mean, I cannot less emphasize on this particular aspect, which is communicate, right? It has 2 aspects to it, right? Which is, one is external. So when you have started this project, don't waste time in announcing that you are hiring. Don't take time in creating or posting those requisitions on, let's say, for example, a Monster website. Don't hesitate from starting referrals within the organization. Explore all the avenues. The sooner you do it, the better it is. That's one thing. Second thing, again, in a hiring ramp scenario, we need to understand, why is there a hiring ramp? I mean, it is so very closely knitted or closely coupled to business. There is a pressing business need to have so many people onboarded, and hence everyone in your client organization, in case you are a services partner, or in your organization in case you're part of talent acquisition team, right? In any case, I think your entire leadership would be glued to these numbers, and hence very important for you to post the daily updates. the progress which is happening, right? The daily update is largely progress tactical at the ground level, but what you should also do is to have weekly connect. You can say bi-weekly connect, weekly connect, whichever name you take. But what is more important as a talent acquisition leader or a recruiting manager, you got to have the two kind of communications going side by side. One is a daily update which is largely around the progress on a ground level, and the second is the weekly connect. It is the weekly connect which is going to go to the business leaders in all probability, and your weekly connect has to be slightly different from a daily update in a sense that it should also put your asks forward. What is the support you needed in case you are facing issues? Don't shy away from putting it in weekly connect. And the last thing which many people miss out is responding to the stakeholders, because your stakeholder is the one who is hard pressed for time and he wants those resources as on yesterday. So if he's asking a query of any sort, if you're not in a position to reply that, at least reply that, can I get back to you by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning or 7 o'clock by today evening? But don't let you don't want to add the burden on your head. I mean, as it is, you're hard pressed for so many things. You have escalations, you have drop offs, etc., etc. You don't want your stakeholders coming and sitting on your head and demanding reports and updates from you. So don't do that. So that's communication bit. The last thing which I want to mention is, I mean, we have all seen that. I mean, sometimes I call recruitment as planting a tree. You plant a tree, it takes years to come up to show the first green shoots that way. In a similar way, in a hiring ramp or even in a recruitment, that is, you start your activity and it's only after fifth, sixth, seventh week is when you start getting results. When you get your first results, please announce it. Create energy, recognize people who are responsible for this, right? Create ownership among stakeholders, thank people. That's how you'll create positive energy, because your first success means that all other successes are nearby, right? And they themselves would be, coming in very soon. So that's something I wanted to mention about celebrate. I believe with this, I think it's 10:40 as well, the 3:40 as well. I believe we have covered all the 10 points which I wanted to talk. And the only thing which I want to mention here is that whenever you get a hiring ramp, think about a 100-meter dash or Usain Bolt. Think about that wonderful picture he has. Yeah, when he just springs into action, he catapults and moves ahead. The only reason why he does that, he gets that initial push. And to my mind, the initial push in our scenario is prioritizing things, understanding the kind of quantum of work which is needed, and debriefing with the hiring managers. When you do this thing, you are setting yourself on a course of success. So with this, I'll wind up. Happy to take. Okay, so a thought maybe that you need to understand a few of the risk and failure points, but I'm pretty sure that you would have budgeted in your calculations, etc. So I think one thing over here is that if you have to hire 400 people and you need to you would expect a 10% drop rate. Why don't you start with 440 offers right from day one, or 440 selects from right? You might think that this is not possible because 400 itself is a steep number for me, right? But you should not shy away from taking another 10% as your number to begin with, which is 440. And only when you start working for a 440 number, say for example, will you achieve success. So with this, I'll over to you, Parag. I think I just covered all that I had to cover. Happy to take more questions.
Sure. Thank you so much for that very, very insightful session, Manish. We'll now open up the session for any questions from the audience. So, team, if you have any questions for Manish, please go ahead and please ask those questions. You can type your questions in the chat and we'll be happy to direct those questions to Manish so that he can answer them. So I think we have one question. The question is, Manish says, the problem of plenty with more candidates in the market than jobs today. Any tips to identify and select the best talent?
So I hear you saying that with a lot of options available, how do you get the best talent, right? And a short answer to this is that you need to understand whether you have to go north or east or south or west. Meaning, just don't rely on a JD which has come to you. Understand from hiring manager what is it that they're looking for, right? establish the CTQ. We've talked about it. Establish the CTQ parameters. Understand what are the skill sets which are needed for the job. Understand the availability of the person, etc., etc. When you put your thoughts or wrap your thoughts around a CTQ parameter, which is needed from a hiring manager perspective, in all probability, you will reach out to the right candidate and you will screen the best candidate which is needed for the job. So that's what we believe in, and that's what we have been following. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Manish. I have another member of the audience asking another question, which says, in the wake of COVID, HR professionals have been forced to re-examine their talent acquisition strategies, resources, and technologies. Are there any three must-dos you will suggest before working on any hiring mandate?
So I think we've talked about it, and the 100-meter dash or Usain Bolt example which I gave, where I mentioned that even before you start working, you need to have that initial push, which is very important for any talent acquisition professional or manager to start the work, and which is prioritize the work in front of you. So a hiring ramp always comes not as one role, two role, but a combination of roles, say for example, right? So you need to prioritize it. You need to understand which is those few roles which you need to target without any failure. That's one bit of it. Understand the quantum of work which is needed, forecast that work, align with the hiring managers, that way debrief with the hiring managers. So these are three things. I think we've covered it, but these are three things which I believe is very important before you actually start the process of sourcing, screening, and scheduling. So
Thank you, Manish. It seems like the floodgate of questions has opened up. I have another couple of questions. Uh, so, one question is that every candidate shows interest at the time of submissions, but when we release the offer, they come back with some story and don't join us. Any strategy to avoid last moment back out?
two things. First, I believe as a recruiting manager, you get a wind of how the things are going to be while talking to the candidate, right? So in case you feel that the candidate is dilly dally and not firmed up his mind, maybe you want to take an extra time. I know we are all under pressure, we're all human, right? We want to align interviews and we want to align offer letters, etc. But you have a feeling, right? Please shy away from issuing that offer letter. That's one thing. Second thing, create backups. I mean, it's easier said than done, Parag. It's very important for any recruiting manager to create backups, right? And you will be able to create backups and you will be able to create redundancies only and only when it's not a hit and miss trial which you are doing. When you know what you need to hire, when you have interactions with the hiring managers, meaningful interaction with the hiring manager, and you get to understand what is it that they're looking for. You have meaningful conversation with the potential candidates, and you understand whether the person is willing to join, looking to join, etc., etc. So when you work on these hygienes, your hit rate improves. Obviously there is no straight cut answer. A human mind is a human mind. It flickers. If a person is not joining after taking the offer letter, you can't do much about it. But can you create processes so that you don't deliver a shock to your business, is what I'll say.
Thank you, Manish. I have another question which says, if there are any new vacancies that come through in the middle of other ramps, should reprioritization be done again?
So if you are a hiring manager or a talent acquisition leader, you will probably carve a team out of your existing team and assign those recs to the new team. So how I understand this question is that you are already on a hiring ramp and there is a very urgent requirement, very high profile requirement which has come in. I mean, you can't be saying no to that. So you can't at the same point of time direct your teams towards it, but I'm sure you can carve a team out of it and make them responsible for another ramp within ramp. That's how you'll approach it.
Okay. Thanks, Manish. And another question says, how do you tackle candidates changing expectations and getting multiple counter offers?
Nobody seems to be having answers to this, Parag. That's an industry problem today. That way, but we need to understand again that so okay. Largely, this problem is faced at the fresher level, right? Where a candidate also has many options, and you also have many options in terms of candidate. How do you align? How do you convince the candidate? How do you sell what lies ahead for him is the key. But the moment you get into a slightly mid management or lateral hires, right? So okay. why many offers and why jump from one offer to the other is because those maths, those numbers, those salaries, etc. But the moment you get into a slightly, mid management career or a lateral hires, right? Your career also is important to us. Money is not the only motivating factor, and hence, if you have understood clearly what lies ahead for the candidate, if you have probed the hiring manager correctly, if you have built the value proposition or a recruitment brand in the minds of the lateral hires, I'm sure they are not going to jump for 10%, 15%, 5%, 8% here and there. So that's what I can say.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Manish. In fact, when you were saying that money is not the only thing, I have a question related to money right here, which says, how do you get the best talent within the budget, which might be lesser than what's currently offered in the job market?
So, I mean, are you saying that you have a budget and you have to hire at a higher CTC? Is that what you're saying? I mean,
The
yeah,
question is,
yeah,
if the market trend is X,
yeah.
my budget is X minus 20%. How do I hire the best talent in that reduced budget?
Sure. So, look, I don't want to name companies again, but based on certain criterias on which you are looking to hire, of course, CTC is another, or money is the criteria which you mentioned, but there are so many other criteria based on which you will shortlist a candidate, etc., etc. You need to understand that based on the skill sets which are needed, there can be 2 or 3 pool from where you can get the candidate. So there can be companies like A, B, C, D, E, and F, where already the CTCs are high. Now, if you're not able to match those CTC, you probably have to look at next tier of companies, next level of companies, which are M, N, O, P, and Q. So you have to have this conversation with the hiring manager, saying that, the expectation to hire is at this thing, right? Here is the market pool which is available, right? And the nearest match to your expectation is the market pool which can be had from companies like M, N, O, P, and Q. I hope you are okay. Now, in case hiring manager is okay, you go ahead. In case the hiring manager is not okay, he increases the moolah. That's pretty much.
Okay. And is there any advice you'd like to give to TA professionals to build a talent pipeline to fall back on when required? Or
Uh,
is it really required in today's connected world?
So, you know, the basics remain the same, Parag. Whether it is ramp scenario or non-ramp scenario, I think some of the best, recruiting managers or talent acquisition managers, and I'm sure there are many in the audience today, right? I'm sure they work very, very sincerely and diligently towards it. They create every avenues of referrals. So if they are hiring candidates, they constantly go and seek more referrals from their own community, etc., etc., right? They ensure that they are present in those candidate communities. They ensure that they are present in those seminar sessions, etc., where they get an opportunity to network with people. I'm sure they are the ones who, who log on to your monster website. If you find somebody logging every morning, evening, and noon, he's the guy who probably is more connected and probably has a larger pipeline from which he can, get the candidate. So it's an activity which you need to do over a period of time. It's just that you need to be conscious of this. It's something you need to do over and over again to build a strong pipeline. Yeah.
So the next question is a very informative question from somebody who's very new to the industry. So this member asks, are there any courses one should take for anybody who's just a year into their talent acquisition career? Some courses that could help them strengthen their profile.
I like this question, and whosoever asked this question, my compliments to you for thinking along those lines. Right? Talent acquisition is such an art, is such a science that you will learn on job. There's no way you can learn talent acquisition through a course or whatever. But what you can learn is to understand more from the business perspective. So let's say, for example, you are currently a talent acquisition manager in an IT services firm, or you are a TA manager in one of the global captives which is into retail or BFSI, etc. I think it will be worthwhile for you to spend some time, energy, effort to reskill yourself to become acquainted with the needs of the industry. This will keep you in good stead in both ways. You'll have richer conversations with the hiring managers and you will have better conversations with the candidate. So good question, and that's what I can say.
Thank you. So another member of our audience says that if the parameters to be filled are mandatory, for example, a JD has a range of 3 lakhs per annum to 6 lakhs per annum. Now, this person's getting a lot of profiles with 10 plus lakhs per annum, which is not relevant. So is meeting every parameter mandatory on a job description?
I should be the one who should be asking you whether it is mandatory, because you are the one who have had conversation with the hiring manager. So short answer is good question. When you get a JD question, understand, seek answers from the hiring manager. Nobody can give you answer. Only hiring managers can give. Because, let's understand, the JD is crafted despite the best of the intention in a very short time. And when you have conversation with the hiring manager, you understand aspect of that requirement far more than what is listed in the JD. You will get your answers there.
So another question with regards to work from home is that work from home is becoming a trend in the HR domain. How is this trend going to be effective? Are there any new possibilities going to come up in the future with regards to working from home?
Uh, Again, I'm not sure how we look at work from home, but the way I look at is work from home, only prioritizes and only brings forth the point that your work, you are going to be measured by the work you do, and not from where you do, how you do. Just doesn't matter what time you're logging in, etc., etc. So I think organizations will start focusing more and more on the work, and hence it is going to be immaterial whether you're working from home or you're working on a roster basis or you're working from office. So that's quick answer.
Another
No, in
question.
fact, let me just quickly add on. I mean, I think at our end also we realized that our clients are no longer insisting for reporting into office, etc., etc. And hence, they are looking to hire candidates from cities like Trivandrum and Indore, etc., etc., tech talent, etc. And hence today we are also expanding. I mean, we are the largest RPO provider in the country today, and the kind of ramp which we are witnessing, we are expanding today, and we are looking to hire recruiters, and we are looking to add team members, to help us take care of the ramp, not only from cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, etc., but we are also open to getting those resources. Some of the women folks who are returning back to work, etc., etc., from remote towns, from tier 2 towns, etc. So what is going to be important is work, not work from home. Yeah, sorry, Parag, you're saying something.
No, thank you so much. I think the last point was very beautifully put, Manish. Thanks a lot. In the interest of time, we'll take two more questions. We'll send out the rest of the questions to you so that you can share your answers and thoughts with us.
Sure.
So one question I have here is how, forgive me, how to create ownership amongst hiring managers for successful hiring, because we see tendencies of making only the recruiters responsible for any hiring failures.
So, I mean, we did talk about it. I think it starts from the time when you understand and when you converse with the hiring manager to understand the rec he has opened for you, right? When you start gauging his inputs, start taking his inputs, right? That's when the person opens up. And then you go back to him with a plan that this is how you plan to help him. So there is a shared ownership which comes into picture. The guy will be more open, would be more. So let's say, for example, he conducts 2 or 3 interviews and he finds that the profiles are not up to the mark. It's your responsibility to go back to the hiring manager to understand what is not working, or what is it that he's looking for. You can have that candid conversation only when you have engaged with him beforehand, right? So it's a lot of to and fro. You are better when you work with the hiring manager, make them feel responsible, share insights with them, and make them part of make them own up some part of your recruitment activities, which is selection, etc., etc. So that's how you go about it.
Thank you. The next one I have is a question not directly related to the topic at hand, but more towards the recruitment professionals. So this member of the audience says, why are HR and recruitment professionals always underpaid? Is that because this profession is non-billable?
Uh, let me answer, or let me address the second point. It's not about non-billable or something. I mean, today, if you see, the only function which is closer to business are the people who are getting people for that business. I mean, today the talent acquisition team, I mean, I'm seeing across my clients that way, right? Today a talent acquisition team member is sitting in conversations with the business leaders because he's the one who is responsible to get those resources on board. So I'm not saying that they are seen any less, right? In fact, they are the ones who are more street smart. Their inputs are considered. On the pay package, I'm not sure of any trend as of now, but I'm very sure that some of the best brains in the industry in the field of talent acquisition are also the ones who are paid very well. So I'll leave it at that, Parag. But then, it depends on you how you. So this ramp is giving an opportunity to catapult on the street. I mean, if your business is able to deliver because you have been able to hire those people for them, there's no reason why you'll not be appreciated and you'll not be rewarded.
Makes sense. Completely makes sense, Manish. And thank you for that input as well. So, Manish, I have just one last question. If you're okay with taking that question, we'll take that one more
For
question.
sure, Parag. Let's go ahead.
Okay. So, this member says that when hiring for a sales-based job and when the pressure is high in achieving targets, how do we identify the right candidate and look at reducing early attrition because of the pressure in the role?
Well, not sure why you asked that, because sales and figuring out a great performer is not a difficult task when it comes to sales role. I mean, you just need to look at the person's ability to deliver is one thing, but whether he has a track record of delivering what he has picked up in the past or not. Now, if a sales guy essentially is a sales guy, enterprise or a B2C sales, etc., but then if he has had a track record of delivering in last 7, 8, 10 years, there is a reason to believe that he's going to deliver. And hence in sales, I think the key is to look at track record, right? Not ask too many questions around what the person would do, but try and understand what the person has done. I mean, in his resume, if he has mentioned he was responsible for bringing about sales, etc., understand, was he the torch bearer, was he the flag bearer, or what did he assist in those sales process? When you gauge for these pointers, there is no way you will be wrong in hiring. I think this is largely for hiring manager to determine, but as a talent acquisition manager and a talent acquisition leader who is responsible for bringing the right candidate, it's worthwhile if you probe along these lines. That answers, Parag?
Yes, that kind of is hitting the nail right there on the head, Manish. And Manish, with that, I would really like to thank you for taking the time out today to address our audience. Right, the session was very insightful, very much on point, and gave us a lot of information and knowledge on how to really kind of ace a steep hiring ramp. Thank you once again for your time, and thank you for sharing your thoughts today.
My pleasure, Parag. It was great interacting with you. And all the best, folks. Stay safe, be fearful, stay at home. Very important for us to live, for us to deliver. So, on that note, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Manish. Thank you. So, team, we'll just go ahead. I have another very interesting quick video to share with you all on one of Monster's upcoming events. Monster is soon hosting a virtual career fair targeted especially for CAs, that is chartered accountants. And if you or your organization wish to be a part of this event, please reach out to us. We'll talk to you about how you can go ahead and get enlisted for this virtual career fair. Let me quickly play this video, and this video will tell you how this virtual career fair can actually help you reaching out to the best CAs in the market. Here you go.
Introducing Monster India's mega virtual career fair for CAs. A golden opportunity for multiple companies and multiple candidates to interact with each other over a span of few days. Let's watch how will it work. CA candidates and hiring companies to register themselves for the virtual career fair. Details of participating companies with their open jobs would be announced few days before the VCF dates. Select companies to conduct pre-placement talk to help candidates better. Candidates would then apply for jobs of their choice on the VCF platform.
Companies would conduct interviews of candidates on the VCF platform. Companies would announce list of selected candidates, registration link for companies and participants, as well as other details available in the comments section.
So team, as you know, this is going to be a huge event and this is going to be completely virtual. So reach out to us, let us know if you're interested, and we'll talk to you about how to empanel for Monster's virtual career fair, dates for which are coming very, very soon, very quickly. But once again, I want to thank all of you all for joining into today's webinar. Your questions were brilliant. It was nice to see this kind of engagement with y'all, and I look forward to seeing y'all in many more webinars that we'll be hosting in the future. We'll keep sending out emailers and notifications to you via Monster or Monster's email servers. Once again, please remember to share your feedback. We'll be sending out feedback links to you very shortly, right? The survey will be visible right here on your browser, right? Please make sure you take 2 minutes, share your feedback, tell us your experience about this webinar, and tell us how it has impacted you. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, take care of yourself, right? Stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks a lot, team. Have a good day ahead.